Okay.
We're tackling one of the most frustrating, costly, just time-consuming problems that every single large organization faces. We're talking about the huge delay in generating quality test cases.
It's a massive bottleneck.
It is. And if you've ever tried to launch a major system, a new product, especially in a regulated company, you know the friction isn't really from the testing tools.
Not at all.
It's from all the work you have to do up front. I mean, we're talking weeks, sometimes months of just analysis just to figure out what you're supposed to be testing.
And that is the exact challenge our sources are digging into today. They detail this new approach, they're calling it contextual AI, that's being used to, well, basically eliminate that entire translation process.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to get past the marketing buzzwords. We want to understand not just what it promises, but how it actually works. Structurally. How does it turn this mountain of documentation into instant, usable context for quality engineering teams?
And we really have to stress that core pain point because it defines the whole problem this AI is trying to solve. Like you said, the issue isn't a lack of smart people. It's not a lack of good tools either. Everyone has Jira or Azure DevOps.
Exactly. The problem is that before you can write a single test, you need weeks of analysis. You're so reliant on those subject matter experts, the SMEs.
The keepers of the knowledge.
Yes. Just to pull out and understand the context of what you're even building. You're manually translating all this scattered information into something you can actually test.
And that brings us right to what our sources are calling the enterprise context gap.
Go.
Because in any large, complex company, the solution design isn't in one neat document. It's incredibly scattered.
Oh, tell me about it.
I mean, think about it. It lives across just countless artifacts. You've got nested folders, detailed spec documents, network diagrams, compliance checklists, and, this is the big one, those really complex, multi-layered L1 through L5 process hierarchies.
Okay, let's pause on those L levels for a second, because that's where the human bottleneck just explodes.
It really is.
So for anyone listening who hasn't been, stuck in enterprise architecture hell, these L1 to L5 docs, they're a hierarchy, right? L1 is this super high-level business process, like customer onboarding.
Exactly. And then L5 is the super granular specific system step, something like validate field 7A in the CRM screen.
So the L levels define the scope.
They define the scope. And the delay we're talking about is purely translational. A human analyst has to manually stitch all of that together. They have to interpret it, validate every single layer.
You're sitting there with a 100-page PDF of the solution design.
Right. And you're trying to correlate that with, say, an L3 workflow diagram you have in Visio. And then from all of that, you're trying to derive a single functional requirement that actually ties back to that high-level L1 business goal.
Anyone who has sat in one of those 3-hour L3 definition meetings knows exactly what you mean by a time sink. It's all analysis. And you're leaning so heavily on those expensive SMEs.
The few people who actually know how the whole thing is supposed to work together.
Yeah, and the sources really highlight this. That manual interpretation, especially linking that tiny L5 detail all the way back up to the L1 strategy, it just eats up so much time. It's so prone to error.
And the consequence of all that time is what our sources are calling the reality gap.
The reality gap.
The reality is, even with Agile, there are these huge delays between a design being finalized and a team actually being able to validate it.
Right.
So by the time the humans have finished the discovery, the translation, the test prep, which can take weeks, the reality has already changed. That's a direct quote.
And your validation is immediately out of date. It's reactive by its very nature.
Exactly. And that's why traditional automation tools have kind of failed to solve the real problem here. They're great at running tests fast, but they need perfect input.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Precisely. You give them a surface-level input, like an isolated text field or a single requirement, and they miss the entire context of the solution. They can't connect the dots between the L1 goal and the L5 detail.
And that gap, that's what contextual AI claims to bridge.
Yes. It's framed as the elimination of analysis as a bottleneck, not just making analysis faster. It's a completely fundamental shift in the approach.
Okay, this is where we need to apply some healthy skepticism, because the core promise here is it's radical. The moment you connect your design artifacts, the analysis is already done.
It's a big claim.
It is. The AI supposedly contextualizes the entire solution landscape instantly. It turns all that rich enterprise documentation into test cases without that weeks-long consulting phase.
And this is where we have to get specific about what this is. It's not just a standard large language model.
Right. Not just a ChatGPT.
No. A general LLM can read text and it can summarize it, but it doesn't understand enterprise governance. It doesn't get organizational hierarchy or folder structures.
So it would treat a 100-page solution design in a folder named Project B Phase 3 the same as a random blog post it found on the internet.
Exactly. Contextual AI is different. It's specialized. It's been built to understand the metadata, the relationships, the intent that's implied by your company's existing information architecture.
And when we quantify the impact, I mean, the number in the sources is stunning.
It is. They cite the potential to eliminate up to 90% of SME knowledge transfer time.
Okay, hold on. 90%, that's a huge number. I have to push back a little. Are we talking about 90% of the total project time or just the time spent in those translation workshops?
That's a fair question. It's primarily the time spent on that manual knowledge discovery and validation.
So the meetings.
The meetings, the workshops, the ad hoc questions. I mean, think about the human workflow today. An SME spends days, sometimes weeks, just sitting in rooms explaining the solution design, walking people through diagrams, answering questions, manually tracing requirements back and forth. Right. That 90% saving comes from automating the bulk of that discovery. So instead of the human providing the context, the AI derives it instantly from the documents themselves.
So that completely reframes the SME's job. They go from being a human document retriever to a validator, a high-level strategist.
Exactly. And that is a massive operational saving. It changes the budget overnight.
So what is the AI instantly understanding here? What's it looking at?
It's pretty comprehensive. It immediately ingests and processes the significance of folder structures, those hierarchical relationships between docs. It gets the solution design intent across different projects. And crucially, it processes the deep business and system context that's buried inside the specifications.
So it understands how the big enterprise strategy flows all the way down into that L-level execution detail.
Exactly. And that means you move immediately to validation. Test generation starts instantly after connecting the design source, not after weeks of workshops.
That feels like the core promise. Yeah. Shifting from reactive to proactive. You're not just a cost center anymore. You're a strategic accelerator.
Because the tests reflect the real solution design now, not the design from 3 weeks ago.
Okay, let's get into the deep mechanics. Instant context sounds a bit like magic, but we know it's not. It's engineered. The sources say it works by assembling a complete evidence set for every single test. What is that? An audit trail, a context map?
It's both. It's essentially a dynamic living context map that also serves as a perfect audit trail.
Okay.
So for every test case, the AI generates, let's say, a test for an L4 payment calculation step. The evidence set is the collection of every piece of authoritative information that justified that test.
So it's not just the test, it's the why.
It's the full why. It includes the L1 goal, the L3 process diagram, the specific user story, and, the exact section of the solution design document that defines the calculation logic. It proves why that test is valid.
That is exactly what enterprise quality teams need.
Yeah.
So let's walk through the four-part process the AI uses to build this evidence set. Let's give the listener that specificity.
Okay, step 1 is hierarchy analysis. This is the deep dive into those L1 to L5 structures we talked about. It analyzes the hierarchy, pulls in descriptions and intent from every single level.
And that's crucial because it makes sure the test reflects the right business domain, the right scope.
Precisely. A legacy tool would just see an L4 process step as an isolated piece of data. It wouldn't realize it serves a high-level L1 business goal of, say, minimizing customer friction.
So the AI isn't just reading the words on the page. It's understanding the position of that page within the entire architecture.
Yes. If the test is for an L5 function, the AI knows its parent L4, its grandparent L3, and all the way up to its great-grandparent L1 purpose. It builds that vertical context right into the test itself.
Okay, that makes sense. What's step 2?
Step 2 is strategy integration. This is where it brings in the project-level strategy and objectives. This can even include custom prompts from the organization.
Like what?
Like a rule that says all tests must prioritize security validation or use the specific internal terminology for process documentation.
So it makes sure the output follows the company's own governance and standards.
Exactly. It grounds the output in those institutional rules. Then step 3 is traceability.
A familiar concept.
Familiar, yes, but implemented contextually. It automatically links user stories and requirements into the same review structure. This confirms each test comes from validated requirement intent.
So you avoid that comment trap of testing something from like an old comment in an issue field that isn't even the real requirement anymore.
Exactly right. And now we get to the 4th step, which is the real differentiator here. This is what separates it from a standard LLM. It's called AI-enabled attachment intelligence.
Okay. This is where the depth comes from, right?
This is the key. Because traditional tools, they just scrape text fields from Jira or Confluence. But in an enterprise, the real authoritative business rules, they're buried. They're in these massive, rich documents.
The PDF solution designs, the high-fidelity diagrams.
The ones that an architect spends weeks writing.
And nobody ever actually reads cover to cover during the testing phase.
Exactly. So the contextual AI, it goes beyond just text fields. It generates detailed, structured summaries and extractions from those authoritative documents. And we're not talking simple summaries. These are insights into complex business rules, system conditions, real operational context.
I see. So instead of a human taking 3 days to read a 150-page spec, to manually pull out the payment threshold conditions.
The AI processes that document, and it grounds every single relevant test case in those exact business rules that it derived from that attachment.
And that's how you get coverage that actually mirrors the real system behavior, not just the happy path.
Yes, the edge cases, the complex logic, it's all defined in the specs. By combining the hierarchy, the requirements, and these deep insights from the attachments, the AI grounds every test in real context.
And that foundation, that contextual foundation, is what lets teams move from what the sources call surface-level automation.
Which is really just automating simple clicks.
Right. To true quality engineering, which is about validating the fundamental business logic. The old way was tests based on assumptions. The new way is tests derived directly from the authoritative source of truth.
And this strategic shift leads to three really transformative outcomes for quality assurance.
Okay.
First, and most obviously, tests reflect reality. Because the tests are generated from the same documentation, the same business rules that govern the production systems, they are just fundamentally more accurate. The AI is linking the L1 mission, the L3 process, and the L5 step all together. The test is comprehensive, not fragmented. That's so critical. I mean, if the system is built on the logic in document A, your test must be derived from document A.
Anything else is a risk. You might be testing a system that doesn't even exist in production, which leads directly to the second outcome, business rules validated.
Right.
The AI systematically validates the critical business logic because it's pulling the tests directly from those authoritative sources, the requirements, the solution designs. It makes sure the tests reflect the actual rules, the conditions, the decision paths that drive the whole system.
Yeah.
You eliminate that reliance on someone's interpretation or, a faulty memory.
And finally, you bring it back to governance, which is everything in a large enterprise.
That's the third one. Process alignment. By grounding every test in project context, in the organizational structure, and in those documents, the tests are natively aligned with enterprise processes, terminology, and standards.
So the test documentation uses the exact same language as the operations team.
Yes. Audits get smoother, approvals get smoother. It just works. This really does change the perception of test design. It's no longer this long, expensive chore you have to do for compliance. It becomes a strategic accelerator.
You move directly to deep, context-aware validation, and that accelerates your time to value for quality engineering in a huge way.
So to recap the core insight here, contextual AI works by closing that massive enterprise context gap.
Right. By using an attachment-aware, hierarchy-driven AI to instantly assemble a complete evidence set, you accelerate the testing and, this is crucial, you enforce enterprise governance automatically.
The discovery phase is just gone. The context is instant, and the governance is built right into the output.
A powerful transformation for any team that's currently drowning in disorganized documentation.
It really is.
So this all raises a really important, maybe a provocative question for you, the listener, to think about as we wrap this up. If the foundation of quality engineering starts to rely entirely on derived context from these authoritative sources, if the quality of your testing is only as good as the quality of your source documents, how should enterprises adjust their strategy for creating, for governing, and for maintaining those source documents? The solution designs, the process documents. How do you change that to maximize the value of this new generation of contextual tools?
Well, that completely shifts the focus. It's not about optimizing the testing anymore. It's about optimizing the preparation. It makes your documentation itself the most strategic asset you have.
It really does.
A fascinating thought to mull over. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We encourage you to continue exploring these ideas further.